All right, Double Fries No Slaw morning show presented by Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar. Going to talk a little FSU football with you guys. If you want to call in, if you want to join the show, there is a link in the description to do that. I'll also, I guess, I can put a link here in the comments. I haven't watched a live YouTube in a minute. So I don't know if links in the comments actually work or not, but there is one right there if anybody wants to call in and chat. Again, we'll do a morning show, talk a little bit about, okay, I've got some QB takes here. I don't know if people disagree, agree. It doesn't really matter. We can disagree. But I want to talk a little bit of quarterback battle. I spoke with some people close to FSU QBs this week, or early this week, and I already kind of have some thoughts of what may go down. I don't have any breaking news or anything, and so certainly don't want to represent it like that. But I do have some ideas of what Norvell may do, whether it's this game or another. But let's jump in here. Halloween this week. That's really exciting. Nothing, if you didn't have enough spooky things in your life with FSU football, you do have Halloween on Thursday. I would like to talk a little Halloween. I know that's not why anybody's tuning in. I know that's not why you clicked on this video. But I would like to get some candy takes. I'd like to know what your favorite candy is. Do you trick or treat? Still have kids? Hopefully your kids are the ones doing that. Do you leave candy out? Do you go to the door every single time somebody rings? Do you just leave a bucket out there? I'd like to hear some candy takes. That's really probably what would cheer me up the most this morning. If we could talk about that some. I will say, as people start to file in and we talk about candy and nonsense before we talk about quarterbacks. So my old house, where we live, we've been in this house for about 3 years now. This is our third Halloween here. And my kids are big enough now to where we have to take them around and trick or treat. But when they were smaller and we didn't really do that, or we just go to 2 or 3 houses, my door was right next to the edge of the couch. So I'd put on a football game, Thursday night football, or whatever sporting event was on, and I would get up every single time. Well, my door now is a good solid I don't know how to measure this, 50 feet from my cat, where I'd be watching TV. And there's nothing in that room. It's kind of annoying to have to. So even if I didn't trick or treat, I think I would just leave a bowl out. To me, that's the ultimate laziness, but it is what it is. I'm not going to, I just can't do the get up every 15 seconds. But again, I would like to hear your favorite candies. Yeah, that's probably what's most important in a season like this. Favorite candy is the is the one that blocks and opens lanes for the run game. Well, I'm sorry that you haven't gotten to see that at all this year. I guess we ran the ball okay against Duke. I will say that. I think we did run the ball fairly well against Duke. Harlan, I turned the offstage feeds off just so that I didn't hear anything. But everything go well with starting that, or everything's good? Thumbs up? All right, cool. All right, let's get into it. Snickers, Kit Kat. All right, I'll say this. Kit Kat and Butterfinger are my top 2. I don't know if that's for chocolate. For non-chocolate, I love gummy type stuff. I love Sour Patch Kids. I love Swedish Fish. You remember the Nerds clusters that Coach Mike Leach used to go crazy about? Those are some of the greatest candies of all time. So Butterfinger and Kit Kat for chocolate. I like regular chocolates too. Don't get me, just Hershey's is fine. Crunch bar, I prefer a Crunch though over a Hershey's, just a straight Hershey's chocolate bar. That's boring to me. In moderation, I do like the cookies and cream. Those are just really rich, and so I think those can be a lot. But I am a sucker for the gummies. Swedish Fish, Sour Patch, Nerds gummy clusters. Those are. I steal all of those out of my kid. My kids like them too, but they're like, "Hey, where did all my Swedish Fish go?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. Tooth Fairy took it or something." So, all right, let's get James in here, Harlan. Let's chat with James a little bit, and then we'll talk a little QBs and we'll get rolling. James, happy Halloween week.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah. How's it going, bud?
Yeah, pretty pretty good. Candy corn, man, candy corn. I'm a
Really,
sucker for that still to this day. My
dude? I
wife
feel
thinks
like
it's
candy corn.
gross.
People crap on candy corn. I mean, I don't mind it. I don't know how you crap on something that's got that much sugar in it. It's just sweet. What do you not
Yeah,
like? You know?
I'm actually more of a brownie cake guy myself, though. I'm not too big on candy, to be honest. But um, Yeah, I mean, it's been a minute since I've talked to you guys, obviously with the storm rolling through, and I had a little outpatient surgery yesterday, so all
Mm.
good. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk about, and I know you probably got to get into a lot of this, but looking at yesterday's presser with Mike, I think that there's got to be. I think he's got to drop the hammer. Like for me, I know I've seen you mention it on Twitter too, and you're absolutely right. I'm a professional. You would think that these guys are professionals, these position coaches, and when you're replying to tweets and stuff, about with on inappropriate topics, that just can't be a good look for FSU. And it's time. Some of those guys that I would have. I think he wants and I'm talking Dugan specifically there, but I think he wants him gone. But that could have been the absolute perfect opportunity to dismiss him immediately. But for me, I'm at the place now. The whole staff, pretty much. I'd probably hold. Oh, I'd hold on to Surtain and I'd hold on to Popovich. I like both of them. Fuller's got to go. You can't be blitzing and playing off coverage. You can't give up a 3rd and 20. You can't have 4 illegal substitutions in a game. Like it's just nuts to me. I
Yeah.
mean, at what point, like he's just got to make a statement. Now, does he own some of this? That's on him, absolutely. But you're the head coach, so you're the guy in the seat. You got to make the tough decisions. You got to drop them. And so I think at this point now is the time. You just start, for lack of better terms, chopping heads. It's time to go. And at the very least, that'll get some of the fan base back. That you're realizing the shortcomings and you're just trying to make moves. You're trying to do what you can. That's what he said yesterday. He alluded to the fact that he wants to call plays, but if he's cognizant to the fact that that's not the right solution long term, that he's not too egotistical to give that up. Okay, well, let's make some moves that you can do now. I don't think anybody else on the staff can call plays, so he's got to do that the rest of the year. But let's do other things and show that you're willing to do that. Do whatever it takes to put the best product on the field.
Yeah, and I stayed up pretty late last night watching the World Series and the Lakers game and just different things that were on TV in the NFL game. And so I was editing a couple of videos. So while I was doing that, I haven't listened in a minute, not because they don't do a great job. The only reason I have a podcast today is because of Bud and Ingram starting the Nolecast, and that kind of birthed all the other billion shows that FSU has. So, certainly not a shot that I haven't listened in a while, but I did listen to Bud's last night. Just, it popped up on my timeline on YouTube while I was uploading a video, and I was like, oh, let's see what Bud had to say. Cause I don't typically care for the play-by-play of sports. I can usually watch something on YouTube that I care about listening to more and then watch a show. But anyway, Bud said this, and I thought it was a good point. People have asked, like, what good would it do to fire coaches in season? And I haven't really had a great answer for that. My answer to that has been like, well, it shows that you're serious and you're not willing to mess around, which is true. But at the same time, so does doing it in 3 or 4 weeks. Like it doesn't, I don't know that it makes too big of a difference, in the grand scheme. Like, I don't think we would get to, if Mike's here in 2026 and be like, man, I'm sure glad he made fires and, fired people at the beginning of November instead of the end of November. So like, that's, it would be, to me, like, it's been like, well, it'd be, kind of to appease fans, maybe you wanted to hold on to guys because you thought maybe you could get guys signed and then move on. But obviously the class has fallen apart. I've also thought like Mike just didn't want to embarrass like alums, like, do you want to embarrass Ron, like with a month to go? Like, you can't just wait till the end of the year. And I'm sure that does factor into, Mike's head. The other thing is, I think Fuller needs to go. And at the same time, I'll agree with the people on social media that say like defense isn't the main issue. I think like both those things exist, but like it would be a little bit of a weird look for me for like Fuller to go if the offense is scoring like 7 to 12 points a game. Like how do you, Mike is the one that is in charge of the offense. And so how do you let Fuller go? And then like letting position coaches go? Like, again, I don't know. Like, I don't really think that has a major impact in season. Actually, I don't think it has any impact. But all that said, Bud said this, and I thought it was really good. Florida State, this 2025 recruiting class is absolutely cooked anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But they are going to have to be aggressive in the portal again because they're going to lose a lot of guys to just eligibility stuff. They're going to lose guys to the NFL. They'll lose guys that they just don't want on the roster anymore, that decide to transfer out. They'll probably lose a couple guys that they don't want to lose. And so they're going to have to go back to the portal. And so making some coaching changes now, or at least later in the year, maybe after Notre Dame, heading into Charleston Southern, out of Charleston Southern, something, it would make sense to try and get some guys on this staff as quickly as you could. It's not going to help recruiting, but it certainly could help in the portal. I believe signing day is on December 4th. It's right after that UF game. It's not, usually it's closer to Christmas. It is right after the UF game. And then the portal opens up a week later, I think on December 12th on that Wednesday. I could be wrong. It might be the 11th, somewhere in there, but it is that week, whatever day that week it is. And so it's like, you got the UF game, signing day just a few days after that, and then the portal open a week after that. And you need to have some guys ready to go because you need to attack the portal. And I know that people are burned by the portal and scarred by the portal. Well, if you want to go to a bowl next year, we're going to have to hit in the portal. Like that just kind of is what it is. Like, yes, high school recruiting needs to get better, but it's not going to get better for the 25 class. Like that cake's already been baked at that point. So I do think, I do think that it is going to be a vital for them to recruit the portal and recruit it very, very aggressively and go out and make very competitive NIL offers. They were cheap last year. They were slow to react last year. They didn't get guys on campus that they should have. And they're going to have to do better. And with that, like you can turn things around pretty quickly. Like, and I'm not saying that you could get back to 13-0 next year or anything like that, but I think you could get to 8-9 wins next year if you hit in the portal. And, you look at what Pitt did. They were a 3-4 win team last year and they're undefeated right now. You look at Indiana. They were a bad team last year. They're undefeated right now. You look at SMU, they're quick turnaround. Like it can go pretty quick. And so anyway, I do think that there's the opportunity. I mean, look at Miami. Went from 7 wins and then they bolstered their roster in the portal to go to, probably what's going to be 12 wins. And so, yeah, I think that, Florida State's going to have 2 wins this year, maybe 3 if they can pick one up this weekend. And you could, with the portal, very easily get back up into that 8-win range. Now, the only way to do that, I think, is to hire a staff pretty quickly. And so, I don't know that he's going to move on from coaches. I don't know if he is or isn't, but like it would make sense to me for that reason. And I thought Bud made a really good point with that. So that was a really long-winded answer, but I guess all that to say, like, I agree with you.
I think it's just the only thing I'll say. There's two things I wanted to highlight that you said. So one, yeah, I agree with you that Fuller's got to go. Is the defense the main problem? No. However, that doesn't mean they're not a problem. And so, and I mean, there's a saying like guy refuses to play zone, wants to play man all the time. And then when he does blitz, he's playing, 10 yards off coverage. I mean, listen, a high school quarterback is a freshman in high school is going to recognize that's the hot read right there. Like, and then you're giving up 3rd and 20. Like, there's no improvement in that area. And I think Fuller was buoyed last year with a stud lineup on the defensive side of the ball. Let's be honest, right? And then the other thing to that, the reason why I also agree with you, I typically don't like to fire coaches, especially so close to the end of the year. However, I think if there's folks out there, and I've mentioned this before, I think out on X, is that, if you're not going to be able to get a big name college coach that can move the needle that's on a staff today, I would really look at those coaches that have NFL experience because it at least might can sell the recruits and transfer portal guys on NFL experience. The people, such as like, I know this is a name to say, but somebody like a John Gruden on staff like that, right? Or Dan Mullen, who's been there, done that. I know he's not an NFL guy, but has been there, done that. Those guys are available. So if you were to, get rid of some of these offensive coaches or defensive coaches and say, hey, listen, this guy has agreed to come in and he's going to start evaluating our roster today. I can use that going into the December 4th timeline that you spoke about. So I think it's just a form of strategic thinking that you could use as a tool, because obviously the like the wide receiver class is now just dried up for us. So there's got to be something that can move that needle. And there's plenty of guys out there with NFL experience or big time college experience. People forget, Dan Mullen, for as weird as he is, he was a great play caller. Right. I mean, I would love to see him on staff. I know he's got the Gator stink on him, but hey, it is what it is. You got to win football games at this point.
Yeah, I'd take Mullen in a heartbeat. As an OC. A lot of people like that UNLV guy. Coach. I'd be pretty good with any of that. And then on defense, yeah, shoot, I more than Mullen, I like Muschamp on defense. I don't know if you can really pull him or not. He's got a pretty sweet gig where Kirby's letting him, coach during the week and then go to his kids' games at Vandy on Saturdays. And so, yeah, that I don't really know that you could pull him or not, but maybe Stoops gets fired at Kentucky because they lose a few games down the stretch and you can grab him. So I don't know. I think there are definitely options, and yeah, he's got to upgrade it. I don't really have a lean on what happens with Fuller, but you would hope that Mike can somewhat read the writing on that wall. And like I said, yeah, it's if one way or the other, Mike needs to. I don't care if he doesn't fire anybody until the Sunday after UF, and that's when you kind of part with everybody. Like, that's fine with me, but the hires have to be made quickly. And, you have to have those in place. Like, I don't even really care about game planning or, offensive install or anything else, recruiting players to stay on the roster after this year. I don't care about any of that. Like, Mike's job right now is to find new coaches that are ready to go on whatever that day is. Is that December 29th, the day after the U? I don't know exactly what day the UF game is, but whatever that is, like, that needs to be the job. The job needs to be like replacing most of this staff. I'm a little worried, I will say. I think only 3 to 4 staff changes would not be good enough and will eventually seal Norvell's fate. I do think he needs to get up into the 5-6 range. I don't know if he will or not. That I just do have a fear about that, and I want to at least voice that if he only makes 3 changes, like if he moves on from like Ron, Randy, and Odell goes off field, or Odell retires, or something like that, to me that's not enough. Like, that is not enough. Though that does address a couple of issues. There's no doubt. But, I think you probably need to look at like all positions. I doubt they move on from JP. I doubt they move on from Surtain. Hopefully they're able to retain Surtain if that's their goal. But, yeah, only 3 and they just being like Ron, Randy, Odell. Odell's to me is not even one of the biggest problems. But yeah, like that, to me, that would not be enough. And so hopefully he does a little more. In all honesty, I think he needs to replace both coordinators, and so whether that's demoting Atkins back down to offensive line to where you can focus on that. Not that that's been good, but if that's your move there, then that's fine. But yeah, I think it probably needs to be closer to 5. So, James, what would you do at quarterback this week?
Yeah, I have no idea why we're even having Glenn as the starter at this point. People will point to that he drove down and scored a touchdown, but let's be honest, Miami had their youngins in the game at that point, right?
Yeah.
I really believe, like, it's clear to me that Luke has the bigger upside. And at this point, you're not salvaging a bowl eligibility season. So I think the writing's on the wall. I think Mike's just got to be candid. If we're moving forward with Luke, I had this conversation with a friend last night. I said, what I would do is I'd start Luke the rest of the year. I'd let Brock know that he can transfer. I'd move Trevor Jackson to the backup and then let the kid, his name eludes me, the kid I think we get from Maitland, right, over in our freshman that's incoming. What was his name?
Oh, Travell Jones, yeah.
Travell, yeah, it's Trammell, yeah. So, and I'd bring him in, right? And so this is the touchy thing. Mike has to make a very strategic decision. I don't think you bring a transfer quarterback in unless it's a can't miss guy, right? Because if you do, you're probably losing Luke and Brock at that point. So, but for me, to answer your question, Luke would be the starter the rest of the way. I would not waver from that at all. I don't care how bad it looks. He's got to go. You got to give the kid reps because we don't have the December practices now with no bowl appearance.
So I'm in agreement there. I do think you should start Luke, and I think you could play Mike's job is to be a salesman at some level, and I think you could start Luke and not just immediately lose Brock for the rest of the year. And I think what you do with that is like, hey man, we're playing both of you. Our goal is to really see like what we've got in both of you and prepare for the future and give both of you lots of reps. But we very much want to see what Luke looks like with a full week of knowing that he's the starter. And I think that's the biggest thing. I don't really think it matters if you throw more passes in the first quarter or the third quarter. That to me doesn't really matter. What does matter is I do think it's a completely different mindset when you go through the whole week knowing that this game is yours. I think it's different than coming in down 14-0 when you already kind of know like, hey, this this game probably isn't going our way. I got no pressure on me. Who cares? No big deal. Like Brock's had his chances now to start 3 games and more than that, even if you back up to last year. But this year he started at Doak. He started on the road against a sleepy kind of crappy environment, and then he started against a rival on the road, right? And so, I mean, he's kind of run the gamut at this point, and I don't even think it's like you're necessarily saying like Brock is done. Like Brock could still come out and win it for you, and maybe it inspires Brock a little bit, but I do want to see what Luke looks like as a starter, knowing that like this is your game to go out and play. And what does he do with that full week of reps with the ones? What does he do with that full week of preparation? What does he do with that first team warm up? What does he do on that first drive, those scripted plays that Mike Norvell has for this offense? What does that look like? And maybe it's just absolutely terrible. Maybe it's not good at all. Maybe he's better coming off the bench this year, but we need to find that out. Like we need to know that, right? This staff, and I like Mike, but this staff could not tell who was going to be in a better position between DJ and Luke and Brock in practice. And that's fine. Sometimes it's hard to tell things in practice, whatever. I don't get paid $10 million, but I would hope that I could figure that out. But I don't think you could tell between Brock and Luke either in practice. I think that needs to be seen in games. And so this idea of rotating every 2 series and, if this happens in the game, we'll do this. Like, no, I just think you start Luke in this game. And if he struggles, like he throws a couple of turnovers, he screws up a little bit, then maybe you go, I'm okay with that. I'm good with you kind of getting away from him at some point if he has 3 turnovers or something, just like he did against Duke, but I do think that you got to give Luke that chance, to show you as a starter. And if it's not this week, like I'm not melting down. I'm not like, oh, well, Mike Norvell's an idiot. Like you can do that against Charleston Southern. You can do that against Florida. I wouldn't necessarily do it against Notre Dame unless he plays well this week. If he plays well this week, then I would do it against Notre Dame. I don't know that I'd make his first career start an on the road thing at Notre Dame against a top 10 team. But I mean, Brock's was Brock's first few starts were pretty tough too, but that's why I would do it this week. What if he comes out and looks good? What if you beat North Carolina with Luke as your quarterback? Then, nobody's going to pick us to go upset Notre Dame still, but I maybe feel a little bit better about it, So I don't know. I'd start him. I'd play Brock. I'd be fine with Brock playing a few drives in this game, but I think you've largely seen from Brock what you need to see. And I think you need to see more from Luke. I will say that the difference between Luke last week and Luke this week, just his pocket presence, his ability to recognize defenses, his ability and willingness to just run and take off. He dropped another dime down the sideline on that. I think it was the first drive of the second half. I thought Luke was really good. Obviously, had the kind of lucky play where he was able to, just keep going on that 4th and 1. But other than that, he's not. He's not a polished quarterback that's ready to like compete at the highest level at this point. But I do think just getting him the reps is probably the smart move.
Well, and I think the one thing you said that you hit spot on was that scripted drive, right? You don't know what that could do for a kid, right? Like those are usually your drives that you have the most success. I mean, technically, unless you're us this year. But I mean, if you go down there and have a nice drive, put together 60, 70-yard drive, punch it in for a touchdown, like that could do everything for that kid. And, so that to me was a very, very strong point. And you're right. There is a different mindset. I like I told you before, I've played in Europe and it was huge when you knew you were the guy, the whole week. It's just a different level of preparation. But I also think that, Mike could do him some good service by getting some of the guys he's used to throwing to. It's time for the Kentrons to find the bench and just have a seat. You know what I mean? Like Williamson, just have a seat. Let Elijah Moore play. Let these kids play that he's used to slinging the ball to in practice. Give him another level of comfort, and let's see what we got here. But I think because I think it's big that we have no practices in December now. So this is your time to find out that is Luke the guy, and I think he can be. The kid shows some promise. Most of the balls he were missing were high, and that's typical of somebody that's feeling rushed and offensive line's not helping him. Maybe Maurice Smith needs to stop being a center for a little bit because I don't know why he can't snap a football anymore. I mean, do we need to plug Washington there? Something's got to change there too.
Yeah, it is so weird that we have. It's coaching, right? I don't want to belabor the point, but yeah, the offensive line struggles are so weird that it's frustrating that we just literally can't do anything there in year 5. But again, maybe you have a new O-line coach next year. Maybe you have an O-line coach that isn't focused on being an OC as well. Who knows, man? So, James, I appreciate you, man, for hanging out a little bit today.
Thanks, TJ. See you.
See you, buddy. All right, take a look at this. This is the passing grade for Duke. I don't really know if I'm supposed to show this or not, but with PFF, but I don't really care. So, Glenn, just a slight bit better than Luke was. I will say a lot of this attributed to that final drive. If not for that final drive, I do want to say I think Luke would be pretty far ahead. But essentially, you got the same type of quarterback play out of both of them. And does Luke drive you down for that final drive? Against backups, I don't know. It's tough to tell that. But if you remove that touchdown and a few of those completions, Luke was pretty significantly ahead of Brock. And so when you look at that, when you just look at both quarterbacks kind of playing about the same, it just kind of would make sense to me to play the one that you've played less, just to kind of see what you can get out of them. So some interesting stats there on PFF. If you look at them for the year, they also both are pretty similar for the season. You don't get dinged for guys dropping the ball. So Luke's gotten some credit for some stuff that hasn't really come to fruition. Obviously Brock's had, more touchdown passes and better stats overall, but they've been pretty similar, especially once you take out, again, that kind of final drive against Miami. I don't know how much, weight you guys are putting on that in your minds, but it means about 0.00 to me against Miami's backups in a game that they're up by 4 scores. So anyway, all right. If anybody else wants to call in, you're more than welcome to. We'll talk for a little bit longer. We can talk coaching position changes. We can talk QB, although I've kind of shared my thoughts there on QB. I don't know that I would say too much differently on that one. UNC sort of a winnable game. I mean, I guess you're only a 3-point dog. Actually, I think it's moved a little bit to where it's like just 2.5 now. FSU, UNC, ESPN. It opened up at 3, and currently on ESPN, so opened at 2. I'm sorry, so now 2.5. I've seen it at 3 though. So 2.5 UNC. ESPN gives you a 47% chance to win. Do you even care? Is it easier to just get it over? It is interesting to see Luke and Brock play. And I am at the point now with this season where I don't really care about results. I don't want to lose to Charleston Southern, I guess. And I would like to beat Florida if at all possible. I'm not predicting that, and I'll probably predict Florida to win. But I would like to see us look competent at times, but I am pretty detached from the results. The results really don't bother me. We just lost by 3 scores against our biggest in-conference rival, and I was like, oh, okay, well, can we flip over to the World Series? What's going on? What's going on with the Yankees-Dodgers game? So anyway, I don't really care about the result, but I would like to see how Luke plays again as a starter. I do think that's important. I think that's important for us to see sooner rather than later. Hey, let me give some love to Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar. If you're in Modesto, California, Warner Robins, Georgia, or Fulton, Maryland, anywhere close to any of those locations, make sure you stop into Decadent. We're probably about a month away from being able to get some of that coffee in your hands. We've had some just minor hiccups with shipping and labels and bags and things like that, but it is quickly being resolved, and we're excited about getting you guys some of that here very soon. And that'll make it, a month away. That'll make for a good Christmas present for some of you. Maybe I'll buy you guys some Christmas presents. Not all a couple thousand that'll watch this, but some of you, maybe 3 or 4. So we'll figure out a way to get that to you. Excited to do that. Hey, I can run through the chat a little bit and see, kind of what that looks like. I also, again, would really, what's really most important on a day like today, 2 days from Halloween, is knowing what your favorite Halloween candies are. So I would rather you tell me that in the chat, but if you have good questions that you want to super chat and make sure they get read, I'm happy to look through some of those. If not, I will look at football questions too, I guess. Please ask Mike to play regular football, take field goals, punt, play defense, screw the metrics. Yeah, I mean, obviously could have kicked some field goals. He was in a situation on Saturday where, I think he knew that he needed touchdowns to win, and I didn't mind any of the 4th down calls. Maybe the game looks a little better, but I also won't fault Mike for trying to win that game, somewhat. 100% agree. Both QBs should play in all remaining games, but Luke should get at least 2 starts, probably UNC and Charleston Southern. Yeah, and if he plays well in one or both of those, it's hard to take much away from Charleston Southern. I will say that. Like, I expect Luke and Brock to both look really good in that game at times. But I mean, whoever looks better over the next 3 games, I let him start Florida and let him play most of Florida. I really want to, it will not save the season by any means. But if you beat Florida to end the year, it kind of puts the old test. You remember when you always used to say, like, I don't care if we go 1-11, we got to beat Florida. I don't really think we believe that, but we're going to find out how close to that is true. So I do want to beat Florida. Like, it's not going to fix everything, but it will feel better to be like, oh, our worst team ever still beat you guys. I'll feel a little bit better. It's not going to be great, but I think start Luke and tell both going in the first quarter that it's Luke's regardless of what happens. Yeah, like I wouldn't rotate a ton in this one unless he starts to struggle. I would just let him have the game. I'd say, like, dude, this is your game. And then we'll go, if Brock, hey, if he struggles, man, we'll go back to you for Notre Dame. If he throws like 3 picks or something like crazy like Brock did, then I'd pull him out. I expect that they end up sticking with Luke long term. I like Brock. I like how he plays. I think he can start other places. I just think you probably roll with Luke. Okay, this is a good one. I don't really get the Fuller hate right now. Defense hasn't been our issue this year. I think defense has been a issue. I don't think it's been the sole issue. I don't think it's been the main problem. At the end of the day, Miami had 450 yards on us, and we stopped them on 1 of their 8 possessions. Clemson had 500 yards on us, and we weren't competitive against them ever. And so I think because Dabo and Mario settled for field goals, those scores looked closer than they really were. But we weren't competitive defensively, and we were really, really piss poor offensively. Like, I'm not trying to take any blame away from the offense at all, but to me, to say defense isn't an issue just isn't. I just don't agree with that. Georgia Tech scored on 5 of 8 of their possessions, right? And so, like, they kind of move the ball at will against us too. Boston College, just wheel route after wheel route. We couldn't stop the run against a team that's just, frankly, not great. Defense much better against Memphis. Again, that's group of 5. Much better against Cal, a team with 0 ACC wins. And they were good against Duke, who is pretty challenged offensively. So I don't know. I don't agree that the defense hasn't been an issue at all. I will agree that it's not been the main issue. The main issue still is the offense. And, but yeah, the defense letting Miami score on 7 of 8 possessions and go for, 950 yards between Clemson and Miami. And I know Miami's got a good offense. Like, I'm not going to say they don't, but yeah, that's still an issue to me. You've got enough athletes to where I don't care how bad the offense is, you should be able to get off the field more than just one time against that team. That's not good enough for me. Third down defense, that's a good point. Third down defense is atrocious. I think the defense relies so much on their talent, and the coaches never really put them in good positions. I will say the linebacker room has certainly developed a little bit better than you thought it might. Defensive tackles have been pretty good. I don't have a lot of complaints there. I think the defensive ends have been pretty atrocious. Secondary's been fine, I guess. But yeah, the defense overall has not been good. Again, it's hard to point fingers at the defense with how bad the offense is, which is atrociously bad. But when at the end of the day, when you have guys that can't block in year 5 and you have guys that can't catch in year 5, I don't know what more you really could get out of the offense, right? And so I don't know. Pretty bad all around. Special teams, though. Special teams has been pretty good this year. So shout out to Mastromanno and Fitzgerald. What else we got? I can look through some more of these real quick. What time is it? 9:34. Indiana brought in 34 kids from James Madison, kind of proving what we all kind of know outside of a few kids. Oh, somebody else commented and it scrolled up on me. Also, we all know Stars Central Michigan are better than most second team SEC. I'm not sure the point there, Rusty. I'm missing it. Shane says, let's talk about Cam Riley. Yeah, I mean, Riley certainly struggled, some pretty bad missed tackles, although I think everybody in that game missed about 1 million tackles. Favorite Halloween candy? There we go. Sour Patch Kids or Starburst? Yeah, Sour Patch Kids are winners. Okay, I have a nitpick with Starbursts. Dude, this is going to sound so lazy. I don't have 15 minutes to be opening candy. Like, why is a Starburst inside of a wrapper, inside of another wrapper? They super glue that candy to, like the wrapper to the can. Like, none of that's necessary. Put it in a little baggie with, like, all the Starbursts open, loose in there. You don't have to Velcro it together and then put it inside of another wrapper. I don't have that much time. Like, I know that sounds lazy, but it really isn't lazy. It's more like I got 3 kids that are probably pulling at my legs, asking me to do something else. I don't have time to be opening candy like this. And so, yes, I do like Starburst. They could be a little softer as somebody who, I know that really sounds like a baby, but I think it's a bit much. The Starburst they're a little bit much. Thank you, though, for answering with a candy answer. That's really what's most important. The Earl Little memes are great. I will say that. Okay, I get a question. I haven't gone back and watched that replay. If somebody wants to tweet it at me, I'd be more than happy to watch that replay. I'm not going to go search a replay in a game that I'm never watching again. But how did his arms end up under him? I don't get that. I don't understand how would you, why were his arms not out, like, to break his fall? I don't know. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. MJJ, yeah, I think he played a little this weekend. He had a couple of sacks against bad teams, and so everybody thought he was really good at that point and hasn't done anything much since then. Who runs the offense? Norvell. Obviously, that needs to change. I would be in full support. It came out in the press conference yesterday. I've been calling for Norvell to get an offensive coordinator for the last couple of years, or the last couple of months. We took a ton of transfers on the reputation of their school and conference. Okay, I see what you're saying now, Rusty. Starters from their teams. Yeah, I will say, yeah, like the idea of if a guy is leaving Bama, there's probably a reason he's leaving. Now, that's not always the case, because we did get Jermaine Johnson, and he came in and was a really good player. But we've had a lot more success grabbing guys from Arizona State. I mean, Oregon with Benson, that's a little different because, again, the injury was a big factor. His coach left. If a guy's transferring because his coach leaves, that's much different than, which I guess the Bama guys, well, no, they all transferred before Saban left. So I take that back. Yeah, if a guy's leaving, Saban or Smart or something, I do think you have to be a little bit careful with that. But, I mean, what's tough is you did get Jermaine Johnson, and you almost got Amarius Mims, who's playing in the NFL right now. So, you can't just say that just because a guy is leaving a big-time program. But I do get what you're saying. We've had a lot more success taking guys from smaller schools that were relatively unknown and developing them into being really good. Verse and others. We took a lot of guys from South Carolina, though, and Mississippi State. So, I don't know. It works all the way around. At the end of the day, I think it just comes down to more like you have to actually scout guys. You actually have to make offers that matter. They wanted that kid from Pitt that went to Colorado and is killing it, Okunlula. They wanted Scrouton, who went to A&M. Like, those guys were good players, and they wanted them. And, they sucked at recruiting this cycle, and so they didn't get them or whatever. So, it's hard to, I don't know what to say. Like, hopefully they're better this year. But yeah, I don't think it's a hard, fast rule of like, oh, you come from a small school or you come from a big school, they just have to scout better. They missed on all their first targets. I mean, to me, that's the big takeaway. They missed on every single one of their first targets. And so they got what they got. They had to settle for a bunch of backups. They had to go with DJ instead of Cam Ward. I mean, yeah, Cam Ward wins you 3 more games on this season, You're 4-4, 4-3? What have we played? Yeah, 4-3, 4-4. Certainly not happy with that, but better than 1 in a billion. So, again, Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar. Appreciate them for their support. Modesto, California, Fulton, Maryland, and Warner Robins, Georgia. If you're anywhere close to there, make sure that you're stopping in and saying hello. Anything else? Any more, again, most importantly, any more Halloween candy that people want to talk about and tell me what their favorite is? If you did them up earlier in the chat and I just missed them, like, I can't scroll all the way up while we're doing this. So I would love to hear your Halloween candies, even if you already said them. Again, I know that's not why you tuned in, but I do. Sour Patch Kids, thank you, Nick. I did scroll up a little bit. Sour Patch Kids, great answer. Peanut butter cups. Okay. My wife crushes the Reese's. Like, she loves Reese's. I'm not as crazy about Reese's as a lot of people. I do like Reese's, but I'm not crazy about them. Does that make me a bad? I feel like everybody likes the Reese's though. So I'm just anti-disestablishment.
You're fired.
Is I guess the answer for that. Earl Little at safety, yeah, he did play better this week. You know, he wasn't good at corner. He wasn't even getting on the field at corner. I thought the defensive effort was really good. You know, we're scrapping the bottom of the barrel for things that we're proud of this team for. Thank you guys for playing hard. But I guess it's better than quitting. It'll be interesting to see. You know, I think it's easy to not quit in a rivalry game. It'll be interesting to see if they quit at all this year. I don't necessarily think they will. Again, that's a very low bar. You know, congratulations guys for not quitting at this thing we're paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. But still. Nerds clusters, Kevin, that's a great answer. Again, Mike Leach's rant on that. If you want to feel better about yourself, not yourself, but if you want to feel better about football, go search for Mike Leach's candy rant. I'm gonna tweet it. I'm gonna tweet it after this because I think it's very important for people to see that. Shout out the GOAT. It was really, really hilarious stuff. The kids pay the dad tax. My kids will tell me, like, they'll know that I'm going to steal some of their candy, and they'll be like, Dad, you can have taxes, but just one. And I'll be like, just one? Yeah, wait till you go to bed. Kit Kats are great. If you could offer an OC, who would you offer? Yeah, I think I'd just take the is it Marion? Is that his name, Harlan? Marion at UNLV. Yeah, I'd Brennan Marion. Yeah, I'd probably take him. I'm not going to pretend to know or have done film study. I just know that their offense is really good. I know they've gone to a backup quarterback and they're still really effective. And I know he's worked with Mike Norvell in the past. I also think that you could get him not necessarily on the cheap, but I think you could get him for a pretty moderately reasonable salary coming from UNLV. Like, you don't have to pay, if you went out and tried to hire a Dan Mullen, you're gonna have to pay him over $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. And I don't think Florida State will be in a position to do that because I think they, first of all, are already kind of behind the 8 ball in revenue. Second, I think that, they're gonna have to buy a bunch of coaches out. So Marion would make a lot of sense to me. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about his offensive style or system or anything like that. I love the go-go chain that he wears, but it's a name that a lot of people that I like and trust have floated and named. Means it's probably not going to happen, right? That's just how kind of it works. Whoever gets the most buzz, isn't usually the coach. But that would be one that would intrigue me. Outside of that, I don't have a hot board. If and when somebody gets fired, then we'll put together a hot board. But I'm not holding my breath on what Mike Norvell will do. I've been begging for changes for years. I went back, guys, and I went back to December on the channel and watched a video that I put out 3 days after the snub. I'm sorry, it wasn't 3 days after the snub. It was in between it was the week before Christmas after signing day. And I put out a video on why we needed to move on from certain coaches. And it's all the same coaches that we're talking about now. And I almost shared it, but then I was like, it's too much of a victory lap. But I did read through the comments. I almost went back again and replied to the comments of people that were like, I can't believe that you would say this about our coaches and you just need to support. And we went 13-0 and blah, 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 blah. Maybe I will. Maybe if I get real petty today, maybe another cup of coffee will get me in a mood to where I'll go back and start responding to some of those. But I don't know. I felt like it was too much of a victory lap to say I told you so back in December, because people out there will tell you nobody was calling for these coaches' heads. Nobody was saying you need to move on. Nobody was saying, we were saying it. We were saying it back in December. We were saying that Florida State staff, even after going 13-0, was not good enough. It was going to be a downfall. There were going to be things that cost this team. And again, I'm doing the victory lap now, I guess. But there were people saying it. There were people saying that it's just not good enough. And I'll say it wasn't just us. Jeff Cameron was saying it. Zach Blostein of Noles 247 was saying that he had some serious doubts. I do think that is that is something that's pretty real. NCAA, how much? This is a good question. How much do you think the NCAA penalties for the transfer portal affected the year? Zero. That stuff came out in late January. At that point, the cake, or in early to mid January, the cake had already been baked. Like Scrouton was already somewhere else. Like you'd already settled on DJ instead of Cam Ward. I don't think it mattered at all. They missed on a lot of guys in December. And I don't think the penalties impacted the portal at all. You kind of had free reign to do what you wanted in the portal in December, and they slow played guys, and they weren't aggressive, and they lowballed guys financially, and they kind of had this idea of like, we're Florida State, kind of like Alabama and Georgia does. Like Alabama and Georgia sometimes lowball guys because they're Alabama and Georgia, and they just can. Like, hey, we're Alabama. You come here or you don't, but this is your offer. Florida State sometimes thinks that that's them, and that's really not them. I know they had a good year last year, and maybe that kind of gave them that false sense of like security, but that's not. What's the viral meme where he's like, "You're not that guy, pal." Like that's, and I love Florida State. Like, don't look at I'm not trying to talk bad about FSU, but like, you're not that guy, pal. You can't be lowballing these kids. And I sorry for calling them kids. You can't be lowballing these athletes. And thinking that they'll still commit to you. So no, I don't think the NCAA penalties had anything to do with it. I just think we, kind of screwed the pooch there. All right, Decadent Coffee and Dessert Bar. Appreciate them again for their support. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hey, happy Halloween. We'll be back tomorrow night, preview the UNC game. I know that nobody cares about the previews anymore, but we do have a good time talking about the Noles, even in a not fun season. So appreciate you guys as always for tuning in. We love you. Go Noles.